What's up, family? Peace and light, peace and love. Thank you so much for getting with me. You could have been anywhere else in this world, and you chose to just give this sister a little bit of your time, and it is so appreciated. Today, I have a very special guest. We were about to get a fairy cipher happening, but life happens, and I understand that. But I got my sister, the beautiful priestess here, that is going to help us to navigate some of this fairy energy and help us to be able to link up with these fairies in a much more effective way and talk a little bit about this childlike energy and some of the things that I've been checking out and everything. But before we get it cracking, I wanted to let the sister, the beautiful priestess, say hello. And if there's anything that she would like to include in that, please do that. Priestess, please.
Greetings, Priestess.
Peace, peace.
Hello, everyone. Greetings. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh.
And I look forward to, I love talking about the fairies, and I love talking about working with fairies. Because if I had one thing to say, like, that's what that realm is into right now, is the work, because there's so much work that must be done. And it's not even, how like we need to do it, it must be done. It must be done to move forward.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Man, when I'm gonna tell you something, you are the one who really got me going on this whole fairy thing. Now, I heard about the fairies, and you know what I'm saying? I listened to Brother Panic. He used to talk a little bit about the fairies. Never really spoke to me that much. I mean, I was interested, but it wasn't enough to pursue it. You started talking about that. I don't know what it was. You had that discussion going on Clubhouse, and I'm telling you, I went and caught me a fairy Bible and started doing a little bit more studying, because I started being able to make these connections, right?
That part.
To how all of these things like kind of link up with like everyday activities in my life. And so for this, I am so grateful, and I'm so glad to have you here to help me in navigating with working with these fairies. But one of the things I wanted to talk about quickly, sis, is these acacia wood. Now, I was listening to a brother named Hunk, who was talking about how he had connected with a shaman who was telling him about like the many magical and, well, I ain't gonna say medicinal, but really metaphysical properties of the acacia wood. And acacia wood has that ability to hold spirit energy. Well, I knew that with wood. We know how wood is really good, with spirit energy. I remember it was an old timer that was telling me about how when you got those wooden floors and everything, that spirits can really connect with you well with that. So that really spoke to me. But he started talking about getting like cookware, not cookware, plates and dinnerware and utensils and jewelry made out of the acacia wood. And what it actually does is it helps to lift in the vibration, because there's a wood where this wood actually has a spirit that can be awakened. On the plants, it enhances nutrition, and it just raises your vibration overall. And so when he was talking about that, I was so intrigued by that. I went out and I bought me an acacia wood cutting board. And before I started using it, he told us about the chant that you say over the wood. It goes, Ja La Ban. And when you say that, you can actually feel the spirit of the wood awaken right there. It is like this uplifting energy. It is absolutely amazing. After I heard that, after I got that whole vibration, after that whole experience, I went out and I caught me an entire dish set. of acacia.
Oh, yes.
And now I'm
Wow.
charging everything up that I eat. And so I said, you know what? I want to give a shout out to that brother for putting me down. But I'm here
Mm-hmm.
to tell you that this is some dope shit to get. And this wood, I believe, has a connection to this fairy realm as well. And working with those nature spirits, that energy, the fairies, anytime I start working with the elements itself, crystals, number one, I can really pick up that fairy energy, but it really feels
Mm-hmm.
intensified when I'm starting to work with that acacia wood. Have you ever heard of acacia wood and how that works?
No, no, you're introducing this to me,
Okay,
and I
okay.
love it. I can't wait to dive into it some more and do some research and possibly get a few pieces, because even with the sounds, like even connecting to the fairy, because the fairy kingdom intersects so much that we do and that we know as tradition and religion and spirituality, and it moved me even just hearing the ah sound, and how important that is, because and connecting that to even that childlike energy, how kids, how even when we were children, physically,
Yeah,
how we had the and we had no hesitation to when something made us say
yeah,
ooh, oh, like that, and how that activates so much
yeah.
in us, around us. We naturally charged our toys with stuff. If somebody gave a kid something, they said exactly the same thing that that you got to say to that cutting board, which like, oh, how a kid, like,
Yes,
we had
absolutely.
no hesitation, and then we mature, so to speak, and it's like, thank you, my heart is great. We come up with more sophisticated kind of ways to say things when it's that like that activating, that connecting with that the piece that you bought.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got
That's
to tell you,
powerful.
I was absolutely fascinated with it, and
Mm.
you know, I didn't know anything about working with acacia wood. I got a couple of statues with that, and so I started looking into it. And there's a lot of people make jewelry with it. There's, you know what I'm saying. People do ancestor
Mm-hmm.
work with it. So there's a lot
Wow.
of things that people do with that. Absolutely amazing. But for me, I really felt that it was definitely giving me a connection to the fairy realm. And I said, well, I'm going to sit in that energy just a little bit longer and work with that and see how that goes. But it kind of reminds me when you said that when a child gets something, they go, ooh, ah.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when I was a child and I used to watch this cartoon called The Smurfs. Every
Yes.
time they saw something that was amazing or something that, you know what I'm saying, shocked
Mm-hmm.
them, they would say, ooh, ah,
Yes.
exactly. And that was a depiction of the fairy realm. I think when I
Mm-hmm.
start looking back to a lot of the cartoons, when I was a child, they kind of give you a peek into the fairy
Indeed.
realm through a lot of the cartoons that are out there, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Yep. And how we would get that and we would take it outside with
mm, mm.
to our peers, and and the beautiful thing about children is, even if they are not having what is considered a good day, if circumstantially they don't neglect to see the wonder.
Right,
They still will ooh and ah, if but silently. But
right.
those Smurfs, they did. They're like,
Yeah.
ooh,
That's it. That's what it reminds
ah,
me of. Yeah. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And it's so heartfelt, and heart centered.
Right. Right. Absolutely. So let me go ahead over onto my next little thing on the signs and symbols up in here with this fairy realm, this fairy thing. has been definitely getting me on a serious journey where there's another brother who's like connecting with a lot of the flowers, and he's been connecting with doing some goddess work with that, and just a lot of and fairy energies that I don't think that people even realize that they're connecting to fairy energies, even when they're
Yes.
up to gods and goddesses and whatnot. And so this is so special to me because these, it seems almost as if they're I don't want to say links, but yeah, maybe sort of like links to help you in accessing energy of, say, Sekhmet, where a lot of people are dealing with that whole sunflower energy, right? Dealing with that and everything. But I wanted to talk a little bit about this childlike energy, because before, when we spoke with Chris, he would talk about one of the ways that he taps into this fairy realm is really getting into that childlike energy, which opens up to creativity. And so, you know me, and I'm a conspiracy theory. I got to look at something. I'm a reacher. You know what I'm saying? And so I started looking at this whole situation that we got right now with how our children are being affected right now with a lot of the entertainment that's geared towards children. Just like always, we always had children's entertainment that gave you that direct link to the fairy realm, which really helped you to tap into that childlike innocence and so forth, right? But now we have a time where we're noticing that the Sesame Street characters have been rejecting a lot of the Black children that have shown up to whatever events that they have, you know, and the kids, they all dancing and partying and getting down. And it broke my heart. I saw the little girl, she's on there just as adorable, had her little beads shaking and everything. And she's dancing and she's cheering and she's just as happy as she could be. And she raised up and gave the high five, and he just like gave her the talk to the hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, gave her the
no Negro child. You know what I'm saying? And it was heartbreaking, but it was also a teachable moment, because what I started to do was look around and notice that people witness that and they're not saying anything.
Yes.
And another instance where at Chuck E. Cheese, a similar incident happened, and there was another woman who was there. She was a Caucasian woman as well. She saw it. I could tell in her expression, she didn't appreciate that either, but she said absolutely nothing to or intervened, you know? And for us to be silent witnesses like that is disturbing to me. But the thing that's most disturbing to me is the effect that it could have potentially on our children. And that childlike energy, that childlike innocence that we need to tap into in order to get into one of the higher vibrations in the fairy realm is kind of important for us to be able to connect to, especially through our children.
Yes. And I will say, like, I saw a lot of the kids, and one thing about that child energy, that childlike energy, is that it is one of, if not the most resilient energies, you know, where is know that it's doing more to us, you know, as elders and adults, because we're filtering it through our experiences, looking at it, we're filtering it through the experiences of our ancestors, whereas that child, in that moment where it may have been immediately impactful, but know that it's impacting us. Because first thing I thought about Miss Rosita in the the lady in the Rosita, I was like, wow, lady or guy, whoever it was, I was like, dang, about that life, they don't want that smoke. Because like when it comes to the children, as it connects to the fairy kingdom, the like those beings that we call like fairies, they send messages, they provide guidance, but what they also do is provide protection. You know.
Oh, okay.
And that's the part I saw. I was like, ooh, they don't want that smoke. They don't want that smoke. You know,
Oh,
and and when I talk about creativity,
yeah.
they when it comes to their messages, they're creative. When it comes to the guidance, they're creative. And when it comes to the protection that they provide, it they are so creative, you know. So
Wow.
so it can come in the most ambiguous way, you know, like that
Right.
protection where all parties involved in doing that to that child, whether they ever change their ideology, will know those moments that are impacted by what they did to those children,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And a
Just
lot of times it will come in solemn moments, you know.
that,
But I was like, oh, they don't want that smoke, you know.
that's off the hook. I'm so glad you told me that. See, I remember, see, our lab, when we were talking the other day, I was
Hmm.
thinking about how, remember when you were telling me about how when people get so angry, they end up attracting a goblin
Yes.
to them, right? So I'm
Yes.
thinking like, oh my goodness, you know what I'm saying? They could plant a seed for our children to be able to have low level, well, I don't want to say low level, but um, fairies that connect with lower vibration energies, you know?
Hmm.
And so if you get an anger, what is the hob, the
Oh, like that.
hobnob or the
You said like
goblin
that
or whatever,
hobgoblin.
you know what I'm saying? All of those other
them,
types of cats, you know what I'm
them
saying?
hobgoblins fast.
So are those, so then in those instances then, because this is what I was thinking, see, this was the direction I'm going, like, okay, so you
Hmm.
lower a child's vibration, they could attract this because they really connect to this fairy energy. So I'm thinking
Hmm.
that this is what the possibilities are. So what you're saying is children are so resilient that there's
Hmm.
not too much that we can do to bring their vibration to such a point to where they would have energies like that that would connect to them and
Right.
see that would come and bring misfortune around you unless you the fool that's messing with these children.
Yes. Like that, the children vibrate at such a frequency that only if they're conditioned to see what happened the way adults, so to speak, like elders see
Yes.
the elder beings of the human race, the way we can interpret it, because automatic, like kids just naturally do what we challenge ourselves to do, which is integrate things, you know, integrate what happened with with moving forward with growth, you know, where the kids do it naturally, no different than, you know, let's just say when we got a spanking sometimes as a kid,
Right.
you know, we would sit there and be in that moment like, whether we were really at fault, whether we really did it or any, because I got a lot of spankings, I ain't do it. And I was like, I ain't do it. But, you know, I would like, you know, go through the motions of that moment and give it a few breaths, give it a few, like my mind would get inundated with images, you know, and I'm all right, just like the next kids, like how the kids might fall out over the most trivial thing in the neighborhood growing up, and next thing you know, we playing again, knocking on the door, like, and Shakesha, come out and play.
Yeah.
We, you know, so we're over it. So it's like only if it is brought to those children's attention over and over and over, but it did far more to mankind at large than it did to those children,
Mhm.
you know, and because you can't, they have such a protection
Yeah.
within them and around them, you know, that, like I said, it's the person in the Rosita and everybody. I think I saw Tellis in one, you know, the monsters, Sesame Street monsters, like whoever was in those, I was like, they don't want that smoke. They don't want that
Right.
smoke.
Right. Right. That's why they hide in the costume, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Hmm.
That's that, you know what? That's That's good to know that children have that resilience about them, that they can kind of combat all of that, which
Mm-hmm.
is which is which is going to bring, well, then what type of energies do children typically attract around them? What within the fairy realm?
Um, different, different kinds, like, because what a lot of it is based on, a lot of it comes with what is required. A lot of it comes with that child's interests and purpose, whether it's a pixie or a brownie, or because even if it's something that's considered a little bit more like a cantanker or something, like a bogey or something, like
Okay.
they don't go around hurting children. Like they appreciate, have an appreciation for that innocence, because like some, and even if it's like an elf, that may be in a child's closet, and it might scare them, not because they would authentically be afraid of an elf. And usually if it's in a closet, it's what's considered like a dark elf,
Mm.
that might come out more at night. It is the notions that have been passed on, that's like, ooh, the boogeyman, like boogeyman gonna get you, like those things. So they're like, what's that? Because children aren't um naturally afraid of the fairy kingdom. Like from the time they are born, there are fairies working with them, playing with them,
Okay.
among so many other, among ancestors and
Yes.
spirit guides,
Yes. Yes.
how
Yes.
to how
Yes.
the kids will just go off, and adults will talk to them, and I'm like, yeah, what you say? And the kid is like, I'm a lot of young guy, like they just, them kids is
Yes.
like
Yes.
having a ball, and they're learning, and they're developing their imagination. Something was coming down on my screen. They're developing their imagination, and so no matter what comes to them, unless they have been kind of spooked, so to speak, by an elder about something. That's why the
Mhm.
kids love the elf on the shelf, you know,
Yeah.
and they gravitate to things like that. But even as a child, the fairy world gives them their reflection. So you have some kids that love to sing, and they're naturally inclined, they're naturally inclined to be musicians, and they sing, and they're like la 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 la, and they have all these tunes where you're like, how could they come up with that with no lessons, no notions of what music is, but they come up with these tunes, and then when they speak with words, so what comes to them is still the same thing that comes to us, is that which it gives us our reflection,
Okay.
you
Okay.
know.
Okay. Okay. So this is starting to make a lot of sense. And I know, like, see, here's the thing. When I read these books, and typically all of the books that I have, when it starts to dive into different realms, spirit
Mm-hmm.
realms, fairy realms, and all of that, they talk about it so matter of fact that I have difficulties trying to translate that into what it looks like in real time, real life. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
And so, even
Mm-hmm.
though they give you a good explanation on what that energy is all about, how it's expressed, like my understanding with dealing with fairies is that first, initially, I thought that I had to be in a high enough vibration in order to connect with the certain types of energy. Like I got to be in my garden, I got to have my grandchildren around and everything. But then
Mm-hmm.
when I started thinking about like on a lower vibration end, and I'm trying to, because I don't know how to phrase that correctly. But when the children become afraid of stuff, like you were talking, you answered my question, the
Mm-hmm.
boogeyman. You know what I'm saying? The guy the guy that's in the closet. There's somebody up under the bed, and they're
Mm-hmm.
terrified of that. it was, see, where I was thinking, and this is where my mind was going, is that a certain level, and it doesn't necessarily have to be like trauma to where it's really detrimental, but a traumatic event like that can kind of break the spirit of someone, or you know what I'm saying, or kind of damage someone's self-image or their perception of how things go. Could that attract that type of energy towards them? And you know what I'm saying? To learn that children have this resilience about their innocence kind of protects them from that type of madness that's happening to them. And so when I was thinking about how adults work with the fairy realm, and I was working like in with fairy energy when I would get with my grandchildren, because I would be in more of a higher vibration state. When I'm out in the garden, I'm in that particular state. But then I started talking to you, and I'm telling you about like a time where I'm in my kitchen and I started feeling a little, you know, just a little scary feeling, like what in the hell's going on? You know what I'm saying? And so how does the fairy realm work for when you're feeling afraid? Or you know what I'm saying, I'm out in the yard and I see little sparklies and everything, I'm like, oh, look at that. But then I come into the kitchen and it's a little late at night and I feel this fearful type of vibe, you know what I'm saying? How does those types of fairies differentiate between the little feel-good fairies as opposed to those fairies that show up in my kitchen and scare the hell out of me? Is there a difference in how I'm vibrating? Is that something that I'm doing? Or is that just the way it goes?
It's something that you've experienced,
Okay.
You know, whether it was in a movie, whether it was, and a lot of times, like even in cinema, what is used is like the other polarity of like ultrasound, which is infrasound. And when it comes to like horror movies, it will embed that feeling so deeply. So if anything reminds you of something either that alarmed you, you know, in a movie or as a child, or somebody planted that seed, you know, it's not that you're vibrating lower or it's a lower vibrational being, it's just how you feel about that experience in that moment based on other experiences. You know, like if a doll comes close to looking like Chucky,
right,
you know,
right, I'm put off. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
know,
absolutely.
and to the, you know, if because Chucky is like a little disheveled my buddy. You remember, like my buddy, wherever I go, and we love Buddy. Yeah, we love my buddy and kid sister till Chucky ass came around.
Right.
You know, and then everybody started sighing like.
Right. So, and you don't see my buddy in the store no more neither.
You don't see no vintage my buddy. Nope. You don't see none of that. It just killed it. It killed it. The only thing that's left is the song. You know?
Absolutely. You know what? See, I watch, and then the other thing too, is I spend a lot of time watching these shows because I'm trying to understand how this works, right? So I watch these shows about people, they complain about their house is haunted, right? And they tell these stories about how, you know, maybe they opened up a portal. We know how that happened. You know what I'm saying? You done did some fool assery. You know what I'm saying? But then you moved into a house and things are going well. And then all of a sudden, a little this, a little of that, a little of the other. You know what I'm saying? And then it begins to escalate. Would that be determined as a fairy activity, or is that what they interpret as it being a haunted house?
It very well could be. It could be like a spirit that's there. Or I remember Miss Blue teaching about, like energy templates that
Yeah.
was there. And it also could be like a fairy, because like I said, they are creative and they are like OG fashionistas. So they may rearrange something in your closet at night.
Yes, yes,
They may,
yes.
and a lot of times, like the elves. Can you imagine in the story of the shoemaker? You remember that? When
Uh-huh.
he didn't necessarily have all the materials he needed, and he was just feeling hopeless, but he had an innocence about him. He was an elder who had a very childlike spirit, and that elf had been there all along. But a lot of times, like I said, some elves just come out at night. Some elves just come out at night, but the elf put together the man's shoes overnight. he repaired the shoes that needed to be repaired. Like, he did so much work, but he did the same work again. He was a reflection of that guy. The elf did the same work as the shoemaker, and so that happens a lot. That happens a lot. But we're trained to see that as, oh, the house is haunted, because nowhere in what has been acceptable, which the most acceptable thing we can think about, that we were indoctrinated in, is like religion. And it's real easy for our minds to immediately go to, if something has happened, then it is something evil. If anything happens, then it's evil, unless
Right.
unless it happens to save your life. Like, if your car straightens up when you're about to have an accident, ooh, okay, that was God.
Right.
But if the pot comes off the stove
Right.
before something happens, like, oh, our house is haunted.
Right. Got
So
you.
it's interesting to see how sometimes when it benefits us, and when it's,
Mhm.
but a lot of times if we feel anything, we're like, ooh, like, like but
Absolutely.
when feelings is part of the magic, and even one of the names for the fairy, like the fee, so you add the
Oh, it's
lean,
called
and
a
you,
fee, not a
yes,
fay.
they have
Oh,
they also, they have so many, they have been called so many different things, from the
okay.
fee, the fae, fata, like, because even connecting them to the oracle, the fatun, the fatua, like, they are the diviners, they are that which magic is,
Okay.
you
Okay.
know and so, but a lot of times when things happen, we're like, ooh, this haunted and this is evil,
Absolutely.
Whereas, like, the kids could see, the kids, before they not necessarily grow out of it, but are convinced
Right.
that they should seal up
Right.
those portals that give them access, because they are the portals, like, they themselves are the portals that give them access.
Okay. Okay. And so when they seal up the portal, is that like when the pineal gland calcifies?
That is like when they merely stop seeing things that are in plain sight,
Gotcha.
you know?
Yeah.
And the only thing that tends to get us back to it are glimpses. Like, right now, largely, like, all over the world, we're dealing with glimpses, where somebody's like, I saw a mermaid, I saw a siren. What was that in a tree? We're getting glimpses that tend to give rise, like, if that part of our brain that believes, that is convinced that none of this is real, the brain will shut it down.
Right.
And so the kids, it just, when they stop, like, their pineal gland is just as strong, just as activated as it ever was. What changes are those neural pathways. What changes, we work as adults to try to get back to that child like state, to where we can source and harness joy, we strive for that when we had it as a child, but it was those moments where we may have been on the floor on our shoulders just spinning, one shoulder on the
Uh-huh.
floor, just
Uh-huh.
spinning around, for no good reason, and
Right.
then shouted at and told to stop, and it just, those moments where it's like, we're alarmed and we just stop because that is met with disapproval. Like, don't do that.
Mhm,
We don't know
mhm.
why. We just know it
Right.
upsets people to do it. So the last, like we slowly just stop. But it's kind of like Tinkerbell. Just because Wendy didn't believe in Tinkerbell, it didn't mean Tinkerbell didn't exist. Wendy just lost access to
Mhm.
Tinkerbell in a certain capacity.
Got
So
you, got
she
you,
still
got
existed.
you, got you.
Wendy just lost access to that realm
Okay.
in the way that she had it before.
That's a dope explanation. That is a dope explanation. So then let's talk about the goblins. What has to happen again for you to be able to get these goblins to connect to you?
Oh, if you get a goblin, you a special somebody, because goblins aren't bad. Like they get a real bad rep, but they, like every other being, they contribute to contribute to the environment, sometimes by taking, like eating, so to speak, but they feed off of certain energies,
Mm-hmm.
like it could be something like rage, and it can be to where you can tell, like, that person may have manifested one, and it doesn't happen a lot. It's just those few people you may have been around and you may not know them, but it's that person where when they come around, everybody's like, ooh, like,
Mm-hmm.
and it almost gives people chills, but not chills. You just want to get away, and not because our mind will tell us because they're evil, but they have just manifested a certain presence, like they just manifested that presence. But that presence, without that presence, they may have done some crazy stuff, so fair, like that kingdom still works with us, but like I said, it's just they get a bad rep because of, goblins are kind of linked um aesthetically with what we might see like a demon to
Okay.
be, but it's even with that, you got to put in some work to get that, and that doesn't make somebody bad. It just makes someone who has had some experiences that they are unable to integrate, so they feel like they have to choose that experience over everything. Like, if you look at it as a circle, how in mathematics you have like the center of the circle, and you have like the radius from the center to one side, and on the other side is like diametric opposition, like the whole, if you draw a line through a circle, it's the diameter.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, like, if something happens to someone, whether it's traumatic or whether it's like lovely, we're still challenged. Like, children can integrate it, whereas a lot of times adults will identify with one side, and they'll forget what happened before that. They'll forget who they were. They will forget the innocence,
Mm-hmm.
and they will only concentrate on what is like in diametric opposition to who they felt like they used to be. And that will take precedence. Whereas when just working with fairies, like, they work that childlike essence, and getting back to that does require integrating those experiences and transforming them.
Mm-hmm.
Almost, in essence, like alchemizing those experiences. And I can't say that it's easy. I can just say it's necessary to get back to that childlike essence, is to really alchemize those experiences.
Okay. Wow. It's fascinating. Very fascinating. I want to ask you about the spirit of the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I remember Miss Blue was teaching us about that, and I really started getting a lot out of that. Like, I really was able to connect to the spirit in my house. It was telling me when shit was going bad in my house.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that my air conditioner, I was telling you about how my air conditioner is cutting up, right? And I kept asking them, please help me, please, like not right now. This ain't a good time, you know? And they kept kicking back on for me. Today, you know what I'm saying? They like, get the bitch fixed.
Mm-hmm.
You can do this, you know? The spirit of the house kind of gives you warnings, like with the smoke detector, all of those other things, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you know, what is that woman who wrote the tidying up book, the Japanese, like Marie Kondo, I think that's her name. And she talks about the
Mm-hmm.
spirit of the house, and you can kind of feel the energy shift after she goes in and she starts to thank the house, and she gets to cleaning up the house and everything. So I said, well, let me see what happens if I thank the house and everything. And the energy absolutely does shift in that. So
Mm-hmm.
with that, the energy, the spirit of the house, is this connected to the fairy realm as well?
Mm-hmm.
This, okay,
Yes.
okay, all
Yes.
right.
because like with us, like I said, we at a certain point, depending on you, like your school of thought, like we're okay, like we're okay communicating with like the ancestors. And you know, Miss Blue talks so much about like the spirit of the house, and you know, even like asking questions and being grateful and really facilitating that energy of gratitude, you know, for the spirit, and understanding the spirit and allowing the spirit to actually like send you messages, you know, just being open to it. And also included in that, because you know how somebody might call in and Miss Blue, like you have a whole portal behind you, you know, she'll say you have a, you know, you may have a portal in in your bedroom, in your bathroom. And a lot of those portals, you know, again, depending on our energy, you know, like those portals, fairies can come in, you know. And they're usually like, if they're in your house, they, you know, they're pretty cool, you know. Like I said, they play a lot, but
Okay.
but they're cool. But a lot of times, even with the spirit of the house, if it doesn't feel harmonious, you, that's something you can ask, like, with no harm to, with harm to none, like, please just balance out the energy, you know, like, please help, like, either help me balance the energy, please balance the energy in this home. Like, you can just ask the direct question, you know, because it's like I said, things, so many things don't mean us harm. They actually mean us prosperity, and they mean us, you know, abundance to come in success to their presence. But a lot of times we see it a certain way, and we get spooked really easy, you know, by the most whimsical things where, you know, it might be an elf jumping on your sofa, but you hear something knocking and you're like,
Right.
you know, and meanwhile the kids in the house are just giggling and laughing. And a lot of times when them kids are jumping on the bed, they are not jumping along.
Right, right. Wow. Well, see, then when I was working with my goddess oracle,
Mm-hmm.
it talked about the goddess Haltia. But then when I started like getting into the study, they said that that energy, it kind of transferred, and then it became a council of fairies that would oversee the house. So I wasn't exactly sure like how that worked. If it was a council of fairies that looked out for the well-being of the house. And then there was an energy of the spirit of the house that was totally separate from that and how that ran. But it looks like what the fairies have is like complete run by being able to go in and out of portals throughout the home and everything.
Yeah, they come and go.
Right. So who is this punk ass damn fairy that keeps stealing my socks? Who in the hell is that?
Yes, because that is that one thing when I ask people, like, if someone talks of, if that conversation is just open to someone who really don't, they're like, okay, Aerika, with that fairy stuff,
Mm.
And I'm like, have you ever thrown away some damn socks in your life? Like, we have thrown, of all the socks we've had in our lives, we've only discarded a few of them ourselves.
Right.
And before,
and
before those socks go, you notice, like, where are my socks? Like, why I can't find no matching socks?
Yes, that's right. Right. Yes.
And I'll be like the elves. I'll be like, I'm like, because only person I know that's like a G when it comes to socks is my mother, because she will my mother washes her socks. She will take a safety pin and she will pin them together.
That's what I'm talking about.
Pin them socks. So she don't have that problem. Because she real diligent with her socks, But she's also, like I said, she's also a retired kindergarten teacher. So she kind of know the game without knowing the game,
Right.
How stuff will just go missing, and the kids would tell her, they might say something like, well, the alien moved it, or they would tell them, like, the elf, they would just say it. And my mother always said, you have always reminded me of the kids in my classroom. And she was like, you make some of the stuff they do make sense, I was like, sometimes I was like, that kid that that kid in nap time, because that's the last time we had the luxury of a nap, was in kindergarten. And I was like, a lot of times that's when their friends will come and talk to them, like what we'll say an imaginary friend. And she was like, yeah, like she had to organize her room based on the kid, because some kids would sleep and some kids would just turn on their sides and she could hear them whispering. And, so she said to some kids would just sit up like, what planet are you from? And they would have these whole conversations. Wow. But because I was the kid, kid at home that would do that. And then she would ask me questions, so she always let me be the fullness of who I am as it relates to that, when she didn't quite understand it, but she never took it, she never took that from me. But the socks, the elves be getting at them socks, and sometimes they'll return them.
Elves, okay.
Yes, because sometimes they will return. Sometimes they will return the socks. I don't know if you ever once in a while, yes, you will find the most antiquated sock. Like, where did this come from? Like a sock on it. Like this sock gotta be, like you feel like, I don't even buy these kinds of socks no more.
Right. Absolutely.
And that one sock will show up, but I'm telling you, like, our minds will shut it down, because that's not what that's not what we're told is a thing, like, and that's the difference with children. They have to learn that a thing is not a thing. So they accept it, and like they accept it with joy, But sometimes when the same things happen to us, we're like, ooh, our house haunted, when the kids aren't reacting, the most sensitive beings, they are enjoying life, they're enjoying life. Mm-hmm. Whereas we think our house is haunted, and the kids don't get to that point until we teach them why we are afraid.
Right. Absolutely. let me be, because I can't end this discussion without going back to this book we was talking about before. It was a wait, what? You know what I'm saying? So when I was talking to you just a few about how fairies seem to have like these portals throughout the house that you can go in and out of. And you were telling me about how we end up when we're in our house and we're in one room, and that's that. And I'm going into the next room and I'm like, what the hell was I doing? What was I coming in here to get?
Yes.
And so when you told me that what I ended up doing was walking through a portal, I'm like, and I had to sit with that for a minute. But I got to tell you, that had to be one of the most profound things that I have ever heard. Can you please give me a brief summary about how that works again?
Yes. And you know, like every archway, every doorway, you know, is a gateway, you know, and a lot of times, and for some reason, like the time and space we're in, a lot of those gateways are like they're a little amplified right now, to the point where, you know, and it's interesting too with those gateways and time, like when people are constantly talking about the timelines and the Mandela effect and just certain, you know, certain things happening that have been happening, like on fairy stuff, it's always been happening, like a daydream, you know, and it's like a daydream, you know, is you having access to a whole nother time and space and dimension, you know. So say likewise, sometimes you have to gather yourself because you may have been going to the refrigerator and you're in your room, and as soon as you walk out of that room, everything in you that was about to get some water is still back there in that you walked into a different reality.
Oh, wow.
A different kind of like a different dimension of the same reality, if that makes sense, because you forgot, like, why the hell am I just standing outside my door? And sometimes you just gotta have to breathe through it. And like I said, I had a friend that called me and she was just, you know, like, I know you won't judge me and won't think I'm crazy. And I was like, I said, are you still near the door? I was like, walk back, just walk backwards with the intention of, you know, of gathering yourself, so to speak, like that part of yourself that's still in that room. But a lot of people are experiencing that which has been happening all along, you know, like it's been happening. It's not new. We're just seeing it. We're being able to actually like perceive it.
Yeah.
You know, but a lot of times it's just knowing, you know, sometimes a post-it note may work, you know, just if you're just conscious of it. You know, it's not like, you know, you're gonna go through a door and walk into Narnia or something, you know. It's just you walk through the door and that portal and a reality of sorts has shifted, you know, like your refrigerator is there. The best I can describe it, you remember in grade school we had those transparencies?
Yeah.
And you could just put something on top of it and it would change, it would just shift what was on the screen.
Oh, yes. What are the overhead projectors?
Yeah, the overhead projector. Yes.
Okay.
So how we can be working on a math problem and next thing you know, she can just pull it. And it's
and I hate that shit.
I know. And it's kind of like that, where it's just you may have walked into an unfoldment where you can still access it, but it's really the reason why I say it's like a transparency, because it's allowing us to integrate some of the dimensions. Because you know how Miss Blue is like, you can be like 80 in another dimension. You know, you could have already lived your life in another dimension, you know, but the realities within the dimension, you know, like I said, you walk through and you forgot everything you needed to know in that moment based on why you walked out of the room. You left it back, you left it in the room, and you walk through that gateway, you know. And I would even say with Ms. Blue, it's worth asking about like any crystals that can bring harmony to that. Because if you're not, like, for people who aren't aware, they just, you know, I can only imagine what that feels like, where people feel like they're losing, like, am I losing my mind? My memory is off. Do I need some vitamins or whatever?
Right.
But
right.
it's been happening a lot where people notice it, you know, whereas it's been happening. You know how people are like, well, Tinkerbell used to dot the I on Disney, and this isn't happening, and this isn't happening, where people start like obsessing over, and it's been happening. That's why I was like, Harry Potter was not necessarily about magicians. It was about the fairy kingdom. Like, if that was the greatest, to me, that was the greatest story. And it was about the fairy kingdom and how they could touch a boot and end up at like their version of Olympic Games. You know, there were port keys.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's like every doorway. That's what's like, portals are everywhere. But when it comes to communicating to the spirit of the house can bring harmony,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in that experience.
Yeah, I got to tell you something, and it works. That was profound for me. I tried that. I stepped out, and I'm like, wait a minute, what in the hell was I supposed to do? I walked backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And like, okay. And I just like took a few breaths, and then it came back. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Going upstairs to get the notebook. Oh, okay. Going upstairs to get the notebook. Had to repeat that to myself a few times and kept it.
Yes, because it will leave just that quick. It will
yes.
leave. If you go through, it will leave again. And that's what's like, I could only imagine if people had a streaming service in their home, that how many people are just like walking almost aimlessly, like, why am I in the refrigerator? Why am I just standing here? What,
Yes.
like, what did I come in here for? You know, just so many people going through that. But it's also like, one of the things that's happening is like we're being challenged to kind of integrate, like I said, integrate some of these realities, you know, and integrate what we know from other dimensions, as opposed to obliviously living in countless dimensions, to integrate, you know, and to not think that our daydream is just this mindless lack of attention. Right. That you can go off into a daydream and really live a whole nother life and come back with a wealth of wisdom that ties into the work that we are to do in this realm, you know? That's why we don't get to stay in those realms. Like, parts of us get to go in the realms. That's why I said it's kind of like Alice in Wonderland, where Absalom, the little smoking caterpillar, when he was just like, who are you? And she, you know, and she's like, it's confusing. He was like, it is not who are you? Like, you know who you are out there, but you done fell in that portal, in that rabbit hole, and you need to figure out who you are here. You like, didn't, you know, she couldn't stay there, so she would have to come and go, but you need to know who you are in this realm, get the wisdom, and that wisdom is to be used in that other realm. But in the other realm, we keep negating what we experienced in that other dimension, you know, it really limits our work.
Wow. Thank you so much. Hold for just 1 second. Let's close
okay.
this.
Repent, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Stop saying I can and say I can. Every night before you go to sleep, see your future, visualize it. Learn the techniques of astral projection. Strengthen your embedded field for protection. Look past status, clothing and complexion. Ask the universe for a proper direction.
Peace. So my bad about that. I had to close that out before the thing stopped, the recording stopped.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I can fix this. Because they'll get me on you know what I'm saying? You can only use so long of a song on YouTube. And then, then they flag it and everything. But they tell me the amount that I use is enough, that the only thing that they'll do is put commercials on. And I said, well, there's not enough people watching it anyway right now. So whatever. So, but you know what I'm saying? But you know what I'm saying? I definitely anticipate that picking up. But I wanted to thank you so much for coming and bringing this powerful discussion. This fairy kingdom is something that I'm going to spend a lot more time working with, because this is something that I've been able to experience directly. And so I get so fascinated. My attention span, it goes from one place to the other. But one thing that's been kind of consistent over the past couple of years, or over the past year, is this fairy book. And every time I go into here, I get some different work that I can do, and I get a completely different experience. Now, here's one of the things that I didn't recognize, that I didn't know, is that I'm working with fire energy, because you know me, I do my chart and try to see where, you know what I'm saying, one of my most effective elements to work with would be is the fire element, which is one of them, right? I gravitate to fire anyway, so that was a no-brainer. I was glad about that. I got to working with fire. And then I goes into this one, and they say that salamanders don't typically work too well with people. Why is that? What do they mean by that? Is that because they don't understand how our emotional range goes?
They when they work with us, it's in very subtle ways. Like they work on us like every day. Like they even tie into like our metabolism. They, you know, our movement, like if those more fiery energies, you know, like when you were jogging, you know, like when you remember when you were like working out and on the like doing the post where you were doing the treadmill and just getting your heart rate up and all of that. Yeah, because they have they do work closely with us. And like I could even see like with you and the salamanders, because like a salamander can walk through the fire and not get burned, whereas somebody else, and if you take away like kind of like the fire with a heated circumstance or an intense circumstance, like you have the capacity to walk through things that other people can't walk through without being damaged in a certain way. Like you know, you can walk through the fire.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's not, you know, where that's not your limitation, but that is a lot of people when it comes to, you know how they say holding your something to the fire. When they say hold your, when it comes to like holding your hand to the fire, I forgot what that saying is.
Fire hands to the fire. One of the
like the hot seat, all those things related to like that fiery energy, like you can walk right through it and tell the story. You walk through it and have a story to tell, where most people just gonna turn around like will
the fairies' presence, will it show up a little differently with this Lionsgate portal energy opening up? Does that change in how they show up? Like, are they more present? Are their energies more subtle, or are they more intensified? Does that change, or are they just doing their own thing and supporting us and working with that energy?
They're that part, like they're constantly, one of the things that they do is support us. And even like the month of August is a celebration of that archetype, you know, like that before, and now it's changed to like Feast of Mary, you know, but it's also like the 13th of August is a festival, a celebration to Diana. You know, a celebration, yes, of Diana, who is Artemis, who is Selene, who is Hecate, you know, different aspects of the moon, different phases of the moon. And this August, in this like this gateway is like a grand celebration, you know. So you know, to put it real southern, like, yeah, they gonna be a little crumb, you know, and maybe more, you know, maybe just you may feel that presence more, you know, you may feel their presence a lot more.
Okay. Wow. You know what? I just wanted to thank you so much for bringing your knowledge, your wisdom, and this fascinating fairy realm. I'm going to probably always have questions for you.
Yes.
So I'm so glad that I have someone available that I can talk to about something so fascinating as that fairy realm, because a lot of people, you hear about the fairy realm and they think that it's tied up to a lot of the fictional characters, like we talked about the Harry Potter books, but you know what I'm saying, the cartoons, you know what I'm saying, Tinkerbell, and that's more of a childlike energy where they get into that whole unicorn fairies type of thing, not recognizing that this is actually a realm that you can tap into and help you really connect to a greater level of creativity. And is this what your genuine purpose is for us in this realm, is to help enhance our creativity?
To help enhance our creativity, our communication, our ability to really open our hearts and be available, you know, because it's so much that is remarkable and like splendid, and you know, that is all around us at all times. You know, it's so much wonder, and to just open up to that, because us not seeing it and us not feeling it and us shutting it down directly affects the environment. It affects our water, it affects our air, it affects the forests, it affects the soil, it affects so much, you know, and that is so many people like shutting down and choosing like that one end of the spectrum, whether they're like, I'm mad at this person and I focus on it, or this kind of person and that's all I focus on. You know, that's what I'm saying, like give those children a chance with that Met Rosita and the Sesame Street people. Like they gonna be in their coloring book, you know. They're gonna be in that, they're gonna be getting that strawberry shortcake coloring book. Meanwhile, we made it a part of our identity immediately. But the first thing I was like is they don't want that smoke, because like I said, they come with a lot of messages. And one of the beautiful things about fairies, and one of the things I think that has caused a lot of debate, is that the way I see fairies is tailored to who I am, and you know, and that which I am. And so, like I said, we could behold the same being, and we would just have to know that we're beholding the same being, because it may show up to you as like this giant, this colossal being, and I may be able to hold it in the palm of my hand, you know, and yet it's the same energy. And so that would lead somebody to think that, you know, Tinkerbell or pixies are these little Caucasian blonde-headed beings when they are every color. But like I said, opening up those pathways and opening up our hearts and actually being available, you know, is that's a large part of it, is actually being available to receive it, you know, like that's what separates someone who can listen to this fantastic story and someone and really be open to it, and someone said that couldn't happen. Have you ever watched television with somebody that wouldn't have happened? Yes. Horses don't talk, you know.
Yes. I have a lot of spoilers in my family. Yes.
Yeah, so it's so that is very important to really become available to it, and to really learn how to communicate and receive the messages that come in so many different forms, because like I said, they speak imagination, and they're guiding us back towards that ability to imagine, and to really, because that's still like a heartfelt place, is that world of imagination. So it's so many things, like, but that's what, in as it relates to adults, looking for that kind of to really bring forward that childlike essence that's already in them. It never dies. Like, that part of them doesn't die. We just have the ability to compartmentalize it, usually by, how people say, I've just built a wall, but we think that wall is keeping other people out, but we can only build a wall to keep ourselves out. Is our wall. Nobody else has to compete with our imagination. So we build those structures and lock ourselves in. And by doing that, like I said, it has an effect on everything natural. And so they are wanting and needing people to open, to renovate, just like Ms. Blue has been talking about the Renaissance. You need to renovate, you need to rebirth those things back into your life, reincorporate it. Like, it's gonna look different than when you were a child. But like I said, physical children have a whole like people who are children, young of age, like they have their work and they do it, like they giggle, they laugh, like that's part of their work, to be in the corner wilding out, talking to something that, other people might not be able to see. They're doing their work.
Wow.
And when we're at home by ourselves, we have a chance to do the same thing, but we just feel a little silly doing it, but it's so rewarding.
I don't give a damn.
Yes, to make those noises. Like, if you just have it in you and you just want to say like, you're like, whatever, like, just noises that a child, we have to tell them to hush, but we have, like, just to get that out, to get it out, because why would it even be in your head? We have such beautiful nonsense in our head that we won't ever let out, because we've been taught that nonsense is like imbecilic, like we're imbeciles if we have that nonsense, when that's what the greatest of tales are made of. Is nonsense that we connected to until we could see the image. That nonsense will carry us into some of those realms, like, and give us access to come and go. Whereas some people will go to the realms, but then logic kicks in, and zoop, soon as it kicks in, you're out.
That's crazy when you were talking about that, because that was one of the things that my cousin, who he passed away in 2017, but he and we used to spend time together, and we used to get lit and talk shit. And what we would sit around and we would get it in, and we would just talk nonsense.
Yes.
Such a magical
It's magical, and especially
not even noticing that's it.
And when you have that person in your life that will let you talk that nonsense, it's so, because it's a lot. It's a lot to get out. It's a lot to like to defrag from. Can you imagine, like, you've been at work and everybody's there, like, talking like some Middle Eastern white man, and that man ain't even in the building. And you got people like with a Southern accent, you got people from the West, and yet everybody is really like messing up their throat chakra trying to speak, and you have to defrag, like you have to really, where that might be a part of our society and part of our traditions that we're actively working on, but it's people, when you have that person, have you seen Bruce Almighty when he was at the news, when he was like at his colleague and messing him up with the news broadcaster when he was like,
Yes.
it gets it gets like that,
Okay.
you know, where
you start
like,
speaking in tongues and whatnot.
yes, and I'm
Yeah.
right, and it's like only so, and again, it's like that is a part of even religion that gets so compartmentalized. Like, okay, it's okay to do it if you're doing it, you know, at this time. Mm-hmm.
But you know what? Here was the thing too that I used to notice, because I used to really be into the whole Kojic scene, right? And those is you hip to Kojic scene, right? Well, if those who may not be hip to the Kojic scene, that's the church where you can count on somebody jumping up, shouting, catching the Holy Ghost and speaking in tongues. You go catch that show at a Kojic church. You know what I'm saying? And what I started noticing is, you know, I was immersed in that whole culture and everything. But because we were taught that so many things were demonic, that we weren't supposed to do those things, that I used to think that speaking in tongues and all of that could only be done up under certain circumstances. What I learned was, after having a few drinks, smoking a few spliffs, you know what I'm saying, that I could still tap into that. It did not matter. I knew something was amiss, and perhaps potentially that we're stepping into a realm that they may not even really truly understand. Tapping into, because I didn't have any malicious intent with that. You know what I'm saying? It just ended up happening and flowing through me in that way. And there's so many of us that kind of embellish at first in the church and everything, but there comes a time where you do get filled with this spirit type of energy, and it does have this flow of words just come out of you, and you don't know what hill you done said up in these streets. I'm like, what way, what? And then I started noticing that when I would get into such a state, that would happen. But I thought that because I'm drinking, I'm getting high, I can't do that shit. You still can't. You still can. Absolutely. So then maybe that whole thing was, you know what I'm saying, was a little bit more to it than what we were taught there. However, the only place where a scene like that is acceptable.
Right. You can only channel that energy. Right.
Right. Because, you know, you can't even show up to a lot of these conscious workshops and try to deliver something like that and unpack that, because they'll tell you that you're going backwards. You know what I'm saying? And this is not a part of that spiritual process. But what I really think is that this is a potential, this is some potential information, some potential knowledge that's untapped. And we probably could, you know what I'm saying, explore that just a little deeper, because that was an energy. It didn't take me into a space where I felt like my vibration was lowering. It would always lift up my vibration. So even though I know alcohol will lower the vibration like nobody's business, I was still able to get into that state to where I was able to elevate enough to get there. So there's, you know what I'm saying? And like I said, and I don't have the answers to that. I don't know, but that's just the experience that I've had. And so I would just be interested in seeing if there's any more work out there now that I'm thinking about it. Like, let me look into
because we put, just like, I feel like not necessarily, I don't want to say that there are so many limitations put on that which God is in the fullness of God, you know, and the fullness of anything. Likewise with the fairy kingdom, like, we call them fairies. They don't call themselves that, you know. And I think one of the greatest representations of how fairies sometimes, how those beings show up, because you do have different things. Like I said, we've labeled them, like whether it's a good mother, godmother, good lady, a brownie, like we've made names up that kind of limit what they actually do.
Right.
But when you think about Cinderella, like a fairy, what's called a fairy godmother, if you manifest a fairy godmother around you, like she sometimes will give you a test of benevolence. And do you deserve it? Like you asking a lot, but would you give a lot? You know? And she's also somebody that you gotta follow instructions. You know, if she say go that way, go that way. Or she'd be like, she kind of like I said, like Hecate, where like, you're not ready to make it. You're not ready for this work.
Right.
You know? And but like even when you think about like in Disney's depiction of a godmother, how she came there and when she started telling her, she put it in a form of song, which they a lot of times will use music. But she was just like Salagadoola, Magicaboola, bippity boppity boo. Put it together, and what have you got? Bippity boppity boo. You know? And it's just like Salagadoola means Magicaboola roo. But the thingamabob that does the job is bippity boppity boo.
Okay.
You know? And before she finished that song, she was like fiddly diddly dee da 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 da.
I gotta watch that shit. That's the dope shit
Yes.
right there.
If you know if you want to hear the song, it's Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo by Verna Felton. That's the one from the thing. But she gave her all the instructions.
Okay.
She gave her all the instructions. She was just like, but of all that I just said, I just gave you a whole dissertation. But if you want to skip all that, the thingamabob that does the job is Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. Now she was like, I'm going on about my way, but she gave her the magic, she gave her everything she needed. That she said, my magic wears off at 12. But she told her the thingamabob that does the job is Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. The clock struck 12. Cinderella, she panicked and she ran down the stairs. I'm sitting there like bibbidi bobbidi boo, mofo, bibbidi bobbidi, like bibbidi. She told you, she ran. But that's
where's yours at?
Where's yours at? I gave, I shared it with you, and so many of those kind of beings, like they share it. And a lot of times, unfortunately, if we're in a dilemma, oddly enough, we're more open, like that's why I said if something straightens up your steering wheel when you're about to have an accident, you're like, fine, I can receive it. But like I said, if you're just at home and something happens, like the pot moves off the stove, anything, anything, you're like, ooh, it's haunted, so it's really interesting how our minds work, where she needed and wanted. And Cinderella was already a little special, because she talked to Gus and them. She talked to rats. So she was already very connected.
Yeah.
But it's just like, you've been talking to Gus, but then when a whole fairy godmother shows up, she told you, like for the, like, this is both science and art, the art of science is what the magic of art does, like she said it, like the Salagadoola Magicaboo. And that's what I'm saying, like those sounds where if you got in church and she was like, and you were like, oh, Salagadoola Magicaboo, la bibbidi bobbidi boo, everybody be like, hallelujah, hallelujah. Same thing. Same thing, fairy godmother. When I tell you, yes, bibbidi bobbidi boo, glory. And so it's that same nonsense that's so magical, because it really does. Like when we talk about like opening up those pathways and creating new pathways, and just like when we were children, we were okay with trying new things and doing new things and learning new things. And at some point in time, it got scary to do that. But that's how it opens up, because when you're doing something new, it kind of disarms a certain part of you, and you're open to learning, and all you need to be is open with a pure heart, just open, and it's likely that you will get a glimpse of something. You just can't it's just not wise to get that glimpse and then talk yourself out of what that glimpse was, you know? Whether it's outside and you get to see a twinkling star, and like, was that a message? If you have to ask, like, it is, yes.
Right.
If you saw it and it was notable, it was for you, you know, and you on that glimpse will give rise to itself, you know, and it just opens up like a world of splendor, like just a world of magnificence. And like I said, whether it's a good day, a sad day, a bland day, that day does not lack the wonder that the fairy kingdom can provide. Like I said, that's the difference in how we'll be mad for 17 years at somebody, and a kid can get pushed over by somebody and they're like, and they over it, you know, they're like, what's next? You know, they're moving on without, because they don't know that they're supposed to hold on to it. They immediately integrate that experience and they have transformed it without even knowing they're supposed to transform it.
Yes. You know what? That's amazing that you said that, because I was thinking about when I was a child the other day, and I had a friend of mine who used to go the hell off, and she would go off and she would pick up weapons and start coming and charging at us and everything and all of this shit, you know what I'm saying? Right. She would go all out in that bitch. And then 2-3 days later, doop, 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 can you come out and play? And we would just forgive that type of shit and keep it moving. And this, I mean, for years and years and years, you know what I'm saying? Like we carried on this way. I guess she outgrew that shit after a while, hopefully. You know what I'm saying? But you know what I'm saying? But as children, we easily forget that. And I remember I got a lesson where you start to see that there's a shift at some point in your life where you start becoming aware that that forgiveness piece, that part, the letting it go, is no longer on the table anymore. And I had a friend and I said something to her about her ugly friend. I didn't want her coming around. I was just in a very bad space that day. You know what I'm saying? A lot going on for a child, you know? And that's where I was at that particular point. And she was upset with me and never did she speak to me ever again. I would think we had to be about 8-9 years old. Never did she speak to me again. That was the first time ever in my life that I have ever experienced someone holding on to a grudge like that after something was said and done in anger. You know what I'm saying? And that's when I realized that things have shifted. And I'm no longer in the realm of all's forgiven. You know,
like since we ain't in Kansas no more.
Yeah, right. No longer, and that, you know what I'm saying? And it's just, you know, weird that you brought that up, because I don't know, I was just, you know, I sit around thinking of shit, you know what I'm saying? But that was one of the things that I thought about, is when that childlike innocence to conflict shifted. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yes, and that goes to like I said, the way in the fairy kingdom, when you know how a lot of people are like, I'm doing my shadow work and it's about integration, you know, like that shadow work. You take those experiences, you agree to be all of yourself, you know, like, and that's why it made sense when Will Smith, who is very connected to the fairy kingdom, when he said, I am, it's my goal to show remorse without being ashamed, you know, and he's doing his best he's integrating everything, that experience, how he's being told it affected other people, how it's affecting him. But shame is not a great way to integrate it, because it's a part of him, you know, and he's integrating that. He's working on, like, that's why I said it happened, you know, and shadow work is not just standing for a prolonged time, like as it relates to the fairy kingdom, is not standing for a prolonged time in those dark areas, is bringing those dark areas in with the light also, you know,
And balance.
and yes, and letting it work together and letting there be harmony with your capacity to lap a Chris and your capacity to understand that that was a reaction equally as important, that was not a loving thing to do and a harmonious thing to do, nor a healthy thing, you know, like, but it happened. Let's integrate that experience. Let's transform it, but you can't transform it by standing in it. You know, it's almost like if somebody went to mine some crystals and they got the damn crystal and they never came back to surface. They you know, like you're just standing there in the shadow knowing that this wasn't the most acceptable thing to do, but you staying in the shadow. You have to integrate that into the fullness of yourself, because that's merely a part of you, you know, like that's a part of you. So I understood when he was saying like having remorse without having the shame, because that's a real tricky vibration to get into.
And a lot of people really didn't get that. They, you know what I'm saying? There were some people that wanted to pick that apart, but there were a few people that was able to see just how deep this man really was. For him, observant and in tune with himself, just to his ability to be able to move past all of this shit and to be able to come out better and catch the lesson that he was supposed to be getting from that.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Definitely. And I think, in my opinion, I think that he's a lot more reflective than people would give him credit.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. But listen, I want to thank you so much for giving me your time and your attention and your wisdom and your knowledge. I'm just so great. I really wish that I wasn't in this sweltering room. You know what I'm saying? That kind of was a distraction, but you know, things happen divinely. And I was definitely able to get a lot of answers with this whole fairy realm thing. And you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And like I said, I'm just glad that I have you available so that as I study and as I learn more, you know, then I'll have someone to be able to bounce some ideas and some thoughts off of and everything. And that, you know what I'm saying, means the world to me in itself. But again, I want to thank you. I don't want to take up any more of your time and just really give you some thanks. Thank you so much. I'm sending you an energetic hug.
Thank you. Thank you too. Thank you for inviting me here, and I had an amazing time. And girl, you glowing, like you look like you floating in the cosmos to me.
I tell you, I'm struggling, but I'm making it. But
yes, but thank you so much.
Listen, if your conversation hadn't been so engaging, ain't no way in hell I'd have been able to sit through this.
Ain't no way.
I'm dying up here. I'm upstairs in this hot room. I am dying. This is a shame. But tomorrow, I love you tomorrow. It is getting rest. In the meantime, what a hot night I'm gonna have. I'm gonna go take me a cold shower and call it the night. But listen, love, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your page. I forgot, I sent that link to your email. So my bad.
Oh, okay.
So I will definitely talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Peace and lots of love.
Peace and love to you.
Love, lady.